So it's funny. Everyone can hear us, by the way. Hi, hey, everyone. I was just chatting with Matt about all kinds of encrypted DMs and stuff like that on X, and I was like, "Let's switch to where everyone can hear us." He's like, "Wait, this has all been
We're
just
not
for
live.
us?"
What? I just gave you my best stuff. I gave you my best alpha. No one got to hear it.
Yes, we gave the best alpha, but basically X has encrypted DMs.
Yeah.
And it's not available for everyone. I think you have to look into it, and on mobile only, I think, and there's some extra stuff in that. So we'll look into that, but definitely look at what I would say is if you should use something like Signal if you're trying to do like real encrypted communications. But if you have to communicate with X people, if you could do it, then encrypt. It's better to encrypt than not to encrypt.
Totally. I mean, and we're in crypto, so everything, it's either Telegram or Twitter right now. So you might as well encrypt where you can. Like same thing with Telegram. It's the DMs are encrypted. Who knows how much we can trust? I trust it to a certain extent. It's better than like plain text ridiculousness. Better than using, even probably WhatsApp. I don't trust that.
Yeah, I
don't trust any of the Facebook, any of the other chats, Instagram chats. You can't trust any of that crap. So it's at least a level. How far above? I don't know, but it's at least a level above that type of stuff.
It is pretty funny thinking about trust because as far as like imagine if you had to trust like the founder or whoever of which thing, and like think about the people. Like, do you trust Zuckerberg? I mean, just not just like the track record, but just I still am reminded of that Theo Von podcast he did where literally the first line was just like, "Hey man, you drink coffee?" He's just like, no. And he said something about on vacation, occasionally he drinks it recreationally. And like, who the hell, what? No human being has ever said they recreationally drink coffee. What the hell, Mark? It's like
he's couching his words about coffee because he's afraid to offend someone. Was that what it was?
It's the most awkward way of phrasing, like
recreationally,
as opposed to like professionally. Like how many?
No, he's a recreational murderer too. I mean, just from time to time, when he's on vacation, he'll take out someone.
It's like,
but,
hey man, how often do you bite a homeless lady's head off and chew it up?
Just recreationally.
Not often, maybe twice a year.
I mean,
so you don't trust him, and then you go to like Pavel for Telegram, and he is way too shredded. I don't know if I trust that.
I trust him way more than Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah,
way more
because he's been arrested.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, and I mean, the intention is that he was Russian and he moved and he created an app that the Russian government couldn't shut down. At least that's what he says. So I definitely, Facebook and the intention there was not to create something that was secure for people. It was to create social media. But with the Telegram, at least what he's saying is their intention was this thing. How well they do, who knows? We can audit it, but.
As well as one of the craziest hairline comebacks in history too, though. He had like doll hair, and then he just comes to full head. Like, the thing is, you can trust he's on like the right side of things generally, but he's also quite the wild boy. And then you go to Elon. I don't know if I would say I trust Elon. Like, I wouldn't pair those words together, but I would say I trust Elon to be Elon. He's a very publicly known quantity, and his behavior patterns and priorities are just, I would say, super transparent. And so you can kind of figure out what kinds of stuff he will and won't do. And so in that sense, I like, it's just like the deal with the devil that is using X. I know the deal, and I'm okay with it.
That's right. We know philosophically where he stands on a number of things. He said them publicly. So they're not all good, but some of them are really good. And so exactly right. It's the devil, he's very transparent about it. He's not going to tell you that he recreationally does anything. Like, he's just going to tell you the truth about what it is. And plus, I mean, the dude, runs like 9 companies, including the only space program on the planet that matters. It's hard to like, Number one, I don't bet against him. Number two, I think his heart's in the right place in a lot of ways. Like with the Doge thing, his heart was absolutely in the right place. He got this is what happens when you try to change things from the inside, Elon. It doesn't work. Got completely screwed over there, and then accused the city president of pedophilia. But
sort of
had a little bit of a.
There was an implication. He said he's on the list. The FC,
5 times or something, yeah.
But like, it doesn't necessarily it's not the same as an accusation, but it does have the reason why this island was famous is for not the best reasons, and so
some of the worst reasons ever. Let's just not even couch that.
Yes.
Don't be a Zuckerberg on this. Let's just call it the some of the worst reasons ever.
Yes,
basically.
it's just like saying like he did work for the North Korean regime. And it's just like
he did some work.
He could have done some paperwork or just walked up and down the fence, but it's also a very dubious connotation because of the rest of things, Yeah. So why don't we roll the actual intro and then get started?
Oh, okay. Yeah, please do.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, intro. Here we go. So, hey everyone. Officially, welcome. This is the Dash Podcast episode 219, which means I've done 219 of these as of this one. It used to be way back in 2017 to 2020. It was like a weekly thing. And then I picked it back up in 2020, I picked it back up on this channel. And now it's roughly monthly or every couple months, whenever. But so I've done a lot of these. It's the weekly live show I just did is episode 194. So it's catching up. But yeah, I'm joined by the one and only that I know of, Matt Carano. How's it going, man?
I'm good. Nice to be here. I'm glad we get to chat again. Did we do the Dash podcast before? We did something live stream, so maybe it was the Dash podcast.
It probably was just the regular news show thing.
Oh, it could have been.
Because we just, it's like, I think I was on a space of yours, and then it was like,
that's right.
Hey, like we should do this. But then this actually has a lot to do with, this is a little bit more, that's a little bit more for play, there's a little bit more for work. There's actually like a work thing. Yeah, you were on 11 months ago.
Oh, wow. Was it that long? That is crazy.
Listen, yeah, sneeze and it's over, right? It's just what happens.
Right.
So before we get into like the intros and everything else, I just, I thought it'd be useful to have on to kind of talk about a subject that is sort of very, near and dear to a lot of Dash people's hearts, which is, productivity of funds from the DAO. So before that, let me hit the sponsor rate really quick, which I just showed them like 2 seconds ago for the other show, but that's fine because they're good people. So this podcast is very proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. And when you buy crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting a random person in a random place somewhere and getting stabbed. Hopefully not. Unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly do own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you could find crypto ATMs and other services where you could buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address. If an ATM supports selling as well as buying, because everyone knows I don't really have fiat to buy with anyway. And you can also search by geographical area, such as a country, a state, or a city. And you can also check and compare actual current fees at the different ATMs. Find out more, go to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. C-O-M, M as in Mary, in case people screw that up too. So that's my piece. It's funny because last time a few minutes ago, I said I did a little bit of freestyling too, and I was just thinking, like, look, I don't know if they actually watch my show and see. I've no complaints over the last couple of years. No one said like, hey, could you not talk about people being stabbed as much? I haven't heard that, but like, I don't, because they're good people and they sponsored me despite probably not making any money off of it. I don't want to annoy them, but I do hope at some point in my podcasting show, whatever career, I do hope I get a sponsor to rage quit because I refused to change the way I do reads and stuff. I do hope that happens at some point.
It is a badge of honor. Yeah. I'm glad that Coin ATM Radar is still live and kicking. That's amazing. I mean, I remember when they launched. How I don't even know how long ago that was. A long time ago, but super useful. When we were all really trying to figure out this whole Bitcoin and crypto thing. So that's awesome. They're still around and doing good work.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as I'm aware, they are integrated directly into the Dash wallet as far as like there's an ATM map. And as far as I know, that's kind of where they're at, which is nice. So we came to chat. So we've known each other for many years. My visible hats maybe haven't changed nearly as much, but I mean, I've gone from doing crypto journalism and stuff for like Cointelegraph and other stuff. I did some work for Dash from 2017 to 2019, and 2020 started this channel and started doing the, as they call them, the micro KOL life, and did occasional side jobs here and there in 2023, for example, for Zcash. But January of last year, I started full-time with Dash, and I still do this thing on the side. So I've kind of always been doing my own thing heavily in the Dash world, kind of, even though my hats have changed. Your hats have changed a little bit as well. But first of all, what was your intro? What was your kind of intro into the crypto industry? I know you had the business that took crypto in the new market, but that's not necessarily in the crypto world, even though you kind of are. But what was your first thing you professionally did with crypto? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was Lamasu. I think I was the first hire, the Harvey brothers, right?
Wow.
They invented the Bitcoin ATM, or their Bitcoin ATM. I think there's some battle between like who actually launched theirs first.
I actually went over this really recently because a friend of mine who does biz dev and all that kind of stuff for the Hive, for Hive, not Thrive, Hive, which used to be Steam back in the day. She's from Vancouver, and Vancouver is where the first publicly deployed crypto ATM happened. But 6 months or so before, Lamasu invented or built the first crypto ATM and then had it deployed at some like conferences and private events and stuff like that. So it's like Lamasu was first, kind of, but then so is this other one in Vancouver, kind of.
Yeah.
So it depends on your it's kind of like a Wright brothers thing. Who invented the airplane? It's like, well, the history books say the Wright brothers, but
yeah, but it's a little sketchy. Yeah, but yeah, I think they were. I mean, they were around a little bit because I remember at PorcFest they had kind of a model copy of it. It wasn't as sleek and nice as even their first version was really nice looking and really well designed. They have a fantastic designer. But I was with them for, I don't know, like a year or so. But that was my first job in crypto, 2013 or 14, something like that. So it's been a long. I mean, working crypto for the most part for the last 12 years, I think, something like that. I mean, there's been some breaks. I've worked on some other projects kind of in between, but mostly crypto for the last 12 years, which is crazy. I mean, still feels new though.
Yeah,
you know,
parts of it for sure. Like, and then I definitely remember the whole Swarm City days.
Yeah,
that's when it kind of felt like back then where we actually are now, where we're getting to where the technology is coming together into something that real people can use. And it kind of felt like that. And that was one of those like first, you could do anything on the blockchain kind of vibes.
There. It was. Yeah. Yeah. Swarm City, we were too early technology wise because the stack that we needed, which was decentralized storage that was persistent and decentralized messaging, Whisper is basically Whisper at the time, and like IPFS, and they're good, but they're just not. They're not really. They weren't scalable at the time. In fact, we haven't even really solved that issue yet. But right. So Swarm City was a decentralized marketplace app where you could literally the contract would let you put sort of any interface over it. So it could be Uber without Uber. It could be Amazon without Amazon. You could do it kind of. It was very flexible in that way. And but the original interface was very sort of like Craigslist meets Twitter, where you would have this like sort of you'd be a hashtag word would be the marketplace, and you go in there and you would be able to post a request. Hey, I'd like a ride from this place to this place. Someone would be able to answer it. You'd be able to get into a deal. There was an escrow component, reputational component, and it all worked really well, except for kind of the protocols underneath, the two that I described. But then, as you know, Parity multisig wallet hack of 2017 ripped 42,000 ETH from us, and a total of 150,000 from 3 projects combined. Just crazy times, and that really killed our runway, because we would have shifted. This is like exactly what Status did. So Status.im is I worked for them for a couple years too, but their product is like they've been working on this on an app that's a wallet, that's a community, that's a whatever for a long time, and they worked on Whisper and IPFS forever. Like they tried to make those protocols work really well, and got to a point where they're like, we can't. We're just going to have to do our own thing. And so they're building their own infrastructure now. I mean, 9 years later or something from when they launched. Something like that, because Swarm City was late 2016. So yeah, and then they were right after us. We were, I think, the 9th. Status was a few months after. A few months made a big difference because they raised like $100 million when they did it. So that was not what we raised. But we would have, if we kept the runway, if we didn't get robbed, we would have. That was the next thing we were going to do, is switch to working on the protocols to get the technology working so that our app could work. And it's funny because it's almost like the EF. I don't want to badmouth them too much. Like, I really appreciate the Ethereum Foundation, but it seems like they didn't. It's like that's what they should have. They should have nailed decentralized storage and decentralized communication, decentralized like chat, encrypted too, by the way. But they just never did, and it was always crazy to me. It's like you have this big funding, like make that work, make the protocol work. Because still, we don't have great decentralized marketplaces. Not like that. I mean, there's DeFi apps, but there isn't like there isn't like a competitor to decentralized competitors to the peer-to-peer networks that we all use, like Amazon and Uber and things. And that's ridiculous this far in. Like, it should be there, but technology is a bitch, I would say.
Yeah, and that might be, as I've mentioned before. I know we talked about very briefly before. That might be something to look at the Dash Evolution chain on, because kind of its specialty is decentralized data in small data storage. You can query instantly with a proof that you got the exactly data you needed without an indexer or node or anything like that. So it could be a piece of that. I know that Brazilian microinsurance company 88i is going to build some of their stuff on that as well.
Cool.
And there's a few other things kind of always working. And it's like, as much as I'm always like proud of stuff that gets delivered, I'm always like, careful to not be like super, I think I kind of feel like if you're an intelligent person, maybe I'll piss some people off by saying this, I don't care. But if you're an intelligent person, the deeper and longer you're in crypto, the less maxi you become, because you know too much to give these absolute type statements. Like, this is the best ever. You're like, well, that I've seen in these criteria, I like this better than anything else so far. It's like the qualifiers start to come in because you just know too much. Just them simple days of buy this coin, it's the best. Like, wow.
Yeah, I don't understand the maxi thing at all. Like, it's crazy to me. It's like, I want the technology to win. I don't care what it is. Like, I just want the technology to win. It's the difference between someone who cares about freedom or not, or cares about liberty or not. I think, although there are some huge liberty lovers out there that I know that are like really sound morally and philosophically, but are maxis. It does not compute for me. I don't understand how that works. It's like, you could say that right now, whatever it is, Bitcoin, I don't know. You can make the case that, like, as of right now, there is a preferred chain or a preferred a preferred project or product. I can understand that, but to close your mind off of some of the deficiencies that are there, like Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin, but there's huge deficiencies there. It's like not scalable. The blocks are too damn small, and it doesn't have smart contracts. It's like you can't do. Then you can do some stuff. But you can't do more advanced work. Like, we need smart contracts if we're gonna circumvent the state on a lot of stuff. And so Maxi, it just it does not compute, doesn't make sense to me. So like to not acknowledge some of the flaws or the drawbacks of using a particular protocol or chain, like let's just acknowledge it. You can still love it. I love Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Ethereum's got a lot of problems too, but I still love Ethereum. Like I understand what we're trying to do with it. So I just can't even think, I would never be a Maxi. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, same thing, obviously. You
Yeah.
preach to the choir a little bit. I do find there's a commonality with builders where if you are a maxi, if less so with Ethereum because you could build things on Ethereum more,
Yeah.
but you run out of things to build. And I kind of find it like where most of the maxis are busy today, the Bitcoin maxis, is in getting strategic reserve legislation passed and introduced.
Right. It's like, what are we doing?
In talking to institutions, getting them to like, and big companies, trying to get them to allocate a portion of their funds. And other than that, it's hard to build on chain. I mean, there was a Lightning Network boom of builders for a while.
There
and
was.
I think most of that kind of dried up. It's more a few big companies that do liquidity for things that are still around.
Yeah.
And it's just like if you're working on things, like you're building privacy tech, you're building payment stuff, you're building apps that do this, you're building decentralized exchanges, you're building all this kind of stuff, I feel like you never run out of things to do.
That's right.
And it's a lot easier to be a maxi if you're just sitting around pontificating, kind of like we're doing now, but we also build in our own in our not free time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other issue that I have too. It's like they get a lot of maxis get super excited about the legislation that makes the number go up, but it's like that's not the point of it. That's not why Bitcoin was created in the first place. It's like it has nothing to do with that. How does that help us? I mean, okay, in many ways, Bitcoin helps us circumvent the state because it does create, hopefully, a money source that state actors can't, infiltrate and censor or, But there's problems. Like there's no privacy with Bitcoin. Like that's not going to. I mean, if they want to target us, they can. Doesn't matter how, if I got a bunch of Bitcoin, they're gonna figure out that I have it. Like they can track it now. So. And it's just a store of value. Then it's just the number go up fiat thing. Like you're gonna just change it into fiat anyway. It's like maxis.
Yeah, we have a lot of work left to do to transform the planet into something that runs on much more open systems. Like there's so much work left to do that I can't imagine just seeing where Bitcoin is now, which is an improvement over the old systems, and just being like, that's good enough. We're like, no, there's so much. It's just like you do one load of laundry, fold it and put away. You're like done. You're like, the floors are filthy. There's no dishes. Like there's so much left to do.
Yeah.
But so all that. So first of all, on your experience, right? How much have you worked with DAOs or experienced with DAOs over the years or things like that?
Yeah, so I helped launch. I didn't launch. I did all the content for and helped launch the Gitcoin DAO. So when we did the token launch and DAO launch in 2021, I mean, I played a pretty good role in that because like I said, all the content for that launch I was responsible for. And then I actually worked in the DAO for a while. I had left Gitcoin, but I was still doing work through the DAO. So there was a work stream called the Moonshot Collective, which was Kevin Iwaki. He's the one that started Gitcoin. Anyway, he ran that. He was super. I remember being super excited about it because Moonshot Collective was let's try to do crazy shit. Like let's just figure out like kind of the outward bounds of what this technology can do and do crazy stuff. Still in under the category of public goods because that's what Gitcoin's all about. But in funding public goods, funding open source. But still, that was super fun. So I participated. I did that for I don't even know, but for probably about a year or so. Working in DAOs is tough because it's hard. What I noticed when I was there is it's hard. Like if you want your DAO to be super productive, then you need to put funds in the hands of productive people, and it's hard to do because oftentimes, if you don't watch out, you put in layers of bureaucracy. It's like we've decentralized to remove a lot of the bureaucracy, but now we just added it back into crypto. So you have to be really careful with that because it just stifles growth of the ecosystem. It just grinds it to a halt if everything is a DAO vote. And that's something that I really advocated for when I was there. I was like, look, let's just get larger payments, into the hands of vetted productive people and let them allocate towards a goal. But it's hard. It's hard, and I really do appreciate the decentralization of power. But you also have to recognize that there are certain people who have like have the most perspective and the most context in an organization or a community who can be trusted to make some decisions that will move the whole community forward. And so decentralization on its own, if it turns into bureaucracy, is not really a good, because it's, like I said, it's just going to grind you to a halt. So
Yeah.
I have some experience, and a lot of good and a lot of, could be
A
better.
lot of the less. Yeah, and it is a good point about like centralization, where if you did have an a omnipotent beneficial deity or something, you want them to have all the power because they just make all the right decisions and all the right time. That's not how it works. So decentralization's like a fail-safe in case whoever's making the it's like it's a diversification almost.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's not just like a gradient. It's not like everything has to be done one way and you just do the sliding scale of the just right centralization. Some things are very centralized. Like if you give someone some money to do a task, you want them to have all the decision rights to do the task, kind of. Yeah. But then at the top, like who runs the entire DAO, that's not so
right. You probably don't want, if you're hundreds of millions in your DAO or a billion in your DAO, you probably don't want
just
that to be
one person doing
one person.
it, or just a few people. It's so I noticed that so my personal opinion has started to become that the DAO that governs best, that governs least, kind of like the less it has to say and do things, the more like it steps into correct course in general. But I mean, there's tons of nuance to that statement, but just on the funding thing, right? So I have had I guess the Dash DAO has had a good 10-year run so far, right? And I've paid attention to most treasury cycles for about 8.5 to 9 of those years. So like I've had a pretty good, even though if I haven't paid close attention, it's not like 3 months go by, I have no idea who's funded at this time. I've just like peeped in and seen what. So
I think you're a rarity, because that's the other issue is people don't pay attention a lot of times. Like they don't participate. So I'm glad you do that. But you love Dash, so it makes sense. It's like you're super invested.
Yes, because a lot of it was I was, learning about it. There weren't a lot of DAOs back in 2016, and then some of it was then working and participating in it, and then just being like active there. And then after, in like the 2020 2024 window of like doing other stuff, I was still involved with the community, and I did help with a couple of proposals here and there, did some side work, or but nothing major. But I was just kind of involved the whole way through, and then now I'm like, that's back to like a thing that I do on less obsessive than before. But basically the point is, I've seen a lot of things. There's been a lot of like people funding absolute crap and just money down the drain. There's been a lot of good things funded that were not a good use of money, despite things. And now I kind of feel like, I'm just going to throw up the leaderboard. The election cycle, the monthly cycle just resolved like as of like 12 hours ago or something like that, like very, very soon. And the leaderboard of the site, just like all the stuff that's funded, we have mostly development stuff, and then there's my stuff, which is business development and marketing, and then a few community development projects here and there, and that's kind of it. I would say there's nothing that got funded that I think was not a good use of money at this point.
Would you tell us?
Yes, I would, honestly.
Thank you.
But a lot of this, because like the purchasing power has shrunk to a position where you just had to start to cut off all the good things. So the wise decision making kind of came from like, we're funding a third of what we'd like to fund, and therefore it's just like top stuff. Whereas I think that if there was plenty of money, maybe the decisions wouldn't be so smart.
That's what happens if you're flush.
Yeah, it's about what is it? Close to 8,000 Dash a month, which is that's like around 160 grand a month is what it's kicking out right now, which isn't nothing, but it's also not massive amounts of money. It's just like, And it's not like you have access to the year's funding at any one time. It's just like you get this, you can spend it or not.
Yeah.
And so basically, yeah, that's just kind of the overview. I think a lot of people have learned how to spend things a little bit better, but there have still been some things, even as recent as this year or last year, where I kind of feel like the management and the results weren't necessarily as efficient as they could be. So all this is a big, giant intro to Thrive. And so why don't you just say, first off, what do you do for Thrive, and then explain what Thrive does?
I can do that. Is it okay if I comment a little bit on the DAO stuff first before I do it?
Yeah. So say whatever you want.
One thing that impresses me about Dash is its longevity. I mean, there's I recently, I hope I've coined this expression, but I've already coined this. Yes. Sorry, pun intended.
Yes.
That Web3 is littered with the dead carcasses of ecosystems that once had hundreds of millions in its treasury. That's right. Carcass. It's and Dash isn't one of them. Dash has survived, but a lot of them are dead now. Dead projects that used to be flush with funding, and there was a lot of excitement, of course, but a lot of the excitement was around money, not necessarily the what you're trying to get from the community. So I really commend Dash for making it. And whenever I see a long-term project and ecosystem like that, it's like, yeah, you guys made it. And so it feels now more like DAOs are kind of, it's like V2 is happening with DAOs, where even if it's just a philosophical change, where they're just way more conscious of how funds go out, and they're just real. I don't know that they're quite they all are kind of seeing it this way, but it's like return on investment, grow the community, impact. Those are the things that we need from funding, and that change is so welcome, because ultimately, the way we grow crypto is by making sure there are great projects who have access to these funds, great projects who have a great product market fit, know how to onboard users, create something fun or a technological advantage. And so much of crypto in the past, I mean, even till still recently, has gone towards just hype or or short-term thinking, and not going towards great projects. But I do think there's a huge shift there, and an acknowledgement of it's not going to work like that, or we're just not going to onboard the billion users that we want. So anyway, that's my feeling. Any other comment on that before I'll talk? I'm happy to talk about Thrive, but
yeah. Well, just as, I mean, yes, but also a side comment on ROI and things like that. Part of the thing is crypto is super rough infrastructure. You're stitching together electrical cables and then being like, who's the customer for this? It's well, there's no customer yet. You're building infra from scratch. And it's been 95% plus, it's a massive amount of speculation of what could this turn into someday, and almost no, what does it do today? And I think that explains a lot of things. Now, when you're talking about ROI and things like that, and I'm sure we'll go into detail once we go a little bit more into the Thrive stuff, but just generally speaking, there hasn't been a good thing for that in crypto for a long time, because it's just been the price goes up and people buy more, and literally that's all you can focus on. But other metrics, oh, we have more users, it's well, are there blockchain transactions? And that's kind of the next metric. First you just have price going up, and then beyond that it's how many transactions are there on the network, which then could be gamed or then could be faked or whatever. And it's okay, that's no good. And now we're coming to there's the TVL metric, total value locked, but which works when it applies. It's not a universal metric, but if it applies, it's well, someone parked their money here. And then you have total network fee revenue. Again, not always applicable.
That's right.
Typically applicable, where it's just how much money is actually coming into the network from people who are voluntarily paying. And so we're kind of evolving in the direction of being able to see those things, but it's still probably hard to figure out what really makes things profitable or worth spending money on, right?
Totally. And I think you actually summed it up, kind of the levels the exact right way. Revenue is the number one. if you're generating revenue for your network, then that's the hardest thing to game. And so if you're funding, one thing you can do is if you're funding projects, you can have them send a portion. If you fund them, you give them $50,000, you give them $100,000 in your token, and one of the stipulations is X percentage of the transactions or of your revenue that goes through your project goes back to the DAO or goes back to the foundation, in perpetuity. Like that's a great way of making sure that you're getting a return on investment from it. And then your revenue is number one, then TVL is kind of number two, and then transaction volume, and then users is I think it's kind of the level, because you can and they're easier and easier to game as you go down transactions. And you can also look at it in sort of a totality too. I mean, it's if there's TVL and if there's like a couple metrics that are happening at a time, it's going to be harder to sort of game more than one. But revenue is really the big one for sure. So that's a good one.
Which, by the way, a little aside before we go on.
Yeah.
Just off the top of your head, do you even? I know a lot of crypto projects work on fees, but do you know of any major ones these days that don't? Because for example, Hive, formerly Steam, doesn't have fees. You have like capacity that you can sort of like pledge power to things and get more capacity, but everything is like free and feeless, and there's a few different models. Some I'm sure do like fee burn, like when you do add a fee burn mechanism, like EIP 1559 added to Ethereum, etc. Now it's the fee revenue is a little, it's still fee revenue, but it's a little different as well. And anyway, basically, do you think that network revenue is it kind of universal today? Or are there any caveats you could think of that's like, yeah, we have to do a different model for these guys?
Not that I can think of. I think that's pretty much the way it works. Although I will say this, and maybe we talked about this before when I first recognized this or found this out, and it absolutely floored me. There's only like 500 revenue positive projects in all of crypto.
That's a lot.
That's it. That's a lot.
It's hilarious. We literally said the same thing, but opposite.
No. Oh my God.
500 revenue positive.
Like that seems
pretty good. Like
that seems so bad.
I was thinking like 4 or something.
4.
Like,
I mean, think of what's the market cap of crypto? What is it?
Couple trillion, something like that. Let me see what it is
Bitcoin's
today.
Trillion, isn't it?
I don't know. Did anyone drop any bombs today that will change it?
I hope
3.329 trillion. So basically,
okay, and there's only 500 revenue positive projects all in crypto. That's nuts. That is nuts.
I do think it is nuts. Like, you're not going to find any disagreement. I'm much more pessimistic in this whole thing, where I guess so. Because I don't know, like Bitcoin. So it depends on what you mean by like. So is Bitcoin revenue positive? Do you think?
I wouldn't call that it's not really. It's a protocol. It's not a project. So I don't know that I would call it that way.
Maybe that's why I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking revenue positive protocols. And like you could have said, Ethereum was definitely for a while the king of revenue.
That's right.
And Bitcoin, not really.
The number goes up, but what is it?
We'll see. Solana definitely did really well. I don't know what, I keep hearing people say it dropped off massively recently, but I haven't paid attention. They were making tons of money.
Yeah.
Thorchain makes a ton of money as far as and there's a few that maybe that's why our numbers are different, because I'm thinking like revenue positive projects. And you think about companies like BitRefill. Has been killing it over the years.
Right.
They work on allowing you to spend your crypto, and they have like 70 plus employees worldwide full time. They're doing all these kind of sponsorships. They're doing great. So,
I think I interviewed with them. They didn't want anything to do with me, which is crazy because I'm pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree that you're pretty cool. I also have a similar experience. I'm very good friends with a lot of people at BitRefill.
Yeah, they seem like a great company,
including the CEO. And I guess we didn't see eye to eye on some things or something like that. But I still now I work with them through promoting their usage of Dash and stuff like that. So
they're a cool company too. I really like their vibe and what they're doing.
But also, like as a little bit of a side note on that, I guess I can't. It seems like they're very focused. And so if you're very focused and successful, like they found a formula that a lot of people haven't found, obviously. Yeah. And I guess they can't afford to be taking chances hiring people that are just not that formula. Maybe they're just like, we know what works. We know which countries to hire from, typically based on salaries or whatever else. We know what, et cetera, out. Like, this will work. And then, anyway.
Well, it's fine because it was the same time I was interviewing for Thrive. I interviewed for a few places around that, like 4 or 5 places around that time. That was after my status time. I took a break. I took like a 5-month break after status. I was like, I was burned out. I needed to do something else. But then, yeah, it was right around that time I was interviewing with Thrive, met our CEO, Daniel Jacobs, and I wouldn't change. No offense to Bitrefill. I mean, they didn't want me, so it's easy for me to say, well, no, I didn't want you. But that's not the case at all. I'm just glad of where.
Yes, and I guess the same thing from my perspective too. I wanted to I spent too much time, being a community member, and I have to post this meme. It's just like it's been in my tabs open for like ever because it's so like applicable to everything. Let me just throw that up on the screen.
Yeah, let's see this.
It says
when haunting you.
When the community when you bought into a project for quick flip but ended up a community member, and it's the hide the pain Herald face.
I can't say. Did you broadcast it? I can't. I can only see us.
Yes, it's only on the YouTube side of things. It's not in the or X or whatever else. But
I've never used talk.brave.com before either.
Have you used Jitsi?
Back in the day, I think forever ago.
It is Jitsi. It's like their own Jitsi instance. I'm just beaming that into OBS and my camera into OBS and then projecting it all out.
Got it.
I will, if you have your XDMs open, I'll just I'll just send it to you because I love.
And can we get comments from people? Are people like messaging us or
we can. There's a couple people who comment on YouTube. Just hi guys, and then
hi.
I'm doing.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
You want to? I mean, them. Do they have any questions? And so we can't like put their comments up on the screen or anything.
I had a bunch of setups where we could, but then my setups kept changing. Like I had a Discord that had people doing super chats, and then people didn't use that. They comment on YouTube, and then I put the YouTube one up. And things changed, and I'm being lazy a little bit to be perfectly.
But do you ever want to use one of the? I mean, I don't want to name anything here, but like something that starts with stream, maybe ends with a
like a fence. Yeah, brook fence. Do I want to use brook fence?
I've thought of any of those?
I've thought of it, but they charge, and
they do charge.
I didn't want to. I was making no money off the show at the beginning. And I just was like, I don't want to. And now that I'm in the free open source, running everything on Linux world, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of a wimp if I wimp out. But
all right.
But I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, maybe not.
Well, you can do some things, is all I'm saying. You can broadcast anywhere. You don't have to then go into OBS, which I'm fine with OBS too, but you don't have to. And then you can do things like put comments up. That you can show them on air. You can do all sorts of things.
Which I can do all of that here. It's just I have to do it myself. It's very DIY.
Oh, I see.
And I'm just like, I don't want to do it. Anyway, Thrive.
All right. So I am head of ecosystem of Thrive. I was actually head of content. I've had 3 roles. It's crazy. I was head of content, so I was always on the marketing side. But then moved over to head of DevRel, and now I'm head of ecosystem. And we can talk about I guess what I do there. But I'll describe Thrive first, and then that kind of fills in the gaps a little bit. But Thrive Protocol. So we partner with some of the top ecosystems in crypto. And, something like Polygon, Arbitrum, like Hedera, ApeCoin, a number of them. And they, sorry to say that on the Dash podcast. Dash is definitely a top protocol, but sadly, we don't have a relationship in that way with them. I do personally, of course, through Joel. But but we partner with these ecosystems, and they allocate some of their treasury to us. And then we go find and fund great projects to launch and scale on their chains. And sort of like... I'll talk about it from the ecosystem side first, but then from the builder side second. But the reason why we exist and this happens is because it's very costly to run if you wanted to spin up a grants program or even a community engagement program and to run it. If you want to do that at scale, and some of these ecosystems are big, so they're doing like millions per quarter, it's very costly. Like I've been told by at least a few of our ecosystems that if they did it themselves, it costs 50 to 60% in admin costs to run like a large dance program. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And also, we talked about return on investment and impact before. Like, it's hard for them at the end of the day to show their community, hey, here's all the community growth we've done. Here's the growth of the community. Here's the ROI we got from all this treasury spend. And those things are what Thrive does really well. Part of that is this is what we do. We concentrate on funding. So we're very efficient in terms of capital allocation. So it does not cost us, and therefore we don't charge them anywhere near, that 50 or 60%. That's the first thing. But then also from an impact perspective, we have a number of kind of layers of how we sort of protect this. But one of them is, as a part of our protocol kind of works like this. We have an incentives app, so we can do questing, that type of stuff. But we have a grants app, which is milestone-based grant funding. Mm-hmm. But no matter what goes through the protocol, if it's a task that goes through, or if it's a milestone that goes through, it gets routed to a reviewer network of badged reviewers, kind of based on their skill set and their expertise. And they have to come to consensus that, yep, the task was done, or yep, the milestone was completed as it was intended to be, before funding goes out. And so in that way, we don't lose funds to civil attacks and spam and fraud and all that, but we also don't fund hypey short-term things or projects that aren't actually delivering the value that they promised. So in that way, if ecosystems fund through Thrive, they know it's going to go towards things that are actually building that community, creating a return on their investment. And how we sort of qualify and quantify that is that we form a board with these ecosystems. So the Thrive Adair board, Thrive Dashboard, maybe.
Dashboard where has a nice ring to it, huh?
Thrive Dashboard sounds great. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so we're members of Dash, and members of Thrive get together, and we work out, okay, what are the types of projects or the type of community engagement type of stuff that we want to do that will show measurable impact for the community. We dial that in. Every community is different. They want to fund different verticals, different life cycle stages, all sorts of different stuff. But we come to sort of consensus on that, and then we go and do it, and then prove it based on making sure that we're only funding things at milestones that are actually achieving that thing. And then at the end of it, or a lot of our engagements now are multiple years, like 3 to 5 years. They're millions typically, but at the end, we'll sort of chunk it out into seasons or whatever. And at the end of it, we can show an impact report and say, hey, look at all the great projects or great initiatives that we funded, and here is the return on that. So that's the ecosystem side. So that's why we have this funding, and ecosystems pay us. So we take a percentage of the total amount that we're funding, that we're allocating. Then on the project side, we talked about this before, Joel, where the way that we grow crypto is to make sure that instead of allowing billions of dollars to go to hypey crap that's dumping on retail, sucking up liquidity, or just plain fraud, instead, we make sure that these treasury funds are actually going to great projects who are creating value. And so we wanted to make it a lot easier. That's why Thrive really was born in the first place. My founder, I mentioned it before, Daniel Jacobs, brilliant guy, two-time Web2 founder, had the idea for Thrive Protocol in 2013, had the URL in 2013. He recognized that crypto does a great job at showing that something happened, that something legitimate happened, but did a very poor job showing that thing that happened actually created value. And so that's why he had this idea. So we wanted to make sure that that projects who are creating value had access to these funds, as opposed to hypey bullshit that doesn't. So we wanted to make it a lot easier for projects to do that. So, if a project goes directly to a foundation, a lot of times it's because it's a cumbersome process for most foundations and DAOs. It can take a long time. It's not always the most transparent, but when you come to Thrive, we have a number of partners. Usually, they talk to me. If we schedule a meeting, I go learn about their life cycle stage. I learn about their vertical, and then by the end of it, it's like, okay, here are the programs that make sense that could potentially fund you. They decide to move forward. They apply just like you would with a grant. That goes to our reviewer network. In about 24 hours, that gets turned around, and they're in the first pass looking to make sure that it's legitimate. Mm-hmm. and then gets forwarded onto one of our boards. So say it's like a funding through Dash, it would be the Thrive Dash board that looks at it, and they would decide right there whether or not this is a great project to fund or a great initiative to fund. And if so, then the rest of the process takes maybe a week or so to fund. So projects that would go through a foundation a lot of times maybe takes months and months. It usually takes a matter of weeks because we already know these are the verticals, this is the life cycle stages, this is what we're trying to do. We go out and find them and match them, to the right funding that we allocate for them, and then the whole process is pretty much streamlined because it's like then it's a contract and milestones and first tranche of funding usually goes out in less than a month or so. So just a much more efficient process through Thrive that kind of helps everybody make sure that these ecosystems are actually funding things that create value for them and making sure that great projects have easy access or easier access to the funding. So I think that's pretty much Thrive in a nutshell.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like it could be very multifaceted. So I'm going to drill down with some of the dumb questions, and maybe we get the smart ones later. But the first one, just you mentioned like a 50 to 60% admin overhead for a lot of these kinds of things. What is it kind of with Thrive then? Typically? Well,
you asked me you've asked me this a few times in a few different ways. How much does Thrive charge? Which I'm not going to get into. That's that is on my CEO takes care of all of the relationships with our ecosystem side. So I wouldn't want to. I would want to have him answer those questions, not me.
So it'd be, but basically the idea is like significantly less.
Significantly less, yeah. It's a percentage of and that actually of what we allocate, and like that's the thing. It's like these are longer term relationships as I mentioned, and they're bigger deals. So it's not like they're fast deals. Like it takes some time to go through them, but it's not a hard sell, honestly, because it's like, look, here are we can just show you. Here's examples of, number one, we've funded over 1,800 projects, so we can show the projects, the impact that they've made. We can show examples of the ecosystems that we've funded and our traction and delivery there, and then they see that it's like we end up funding multiple times the amount of projects with the same amount of funds as the rest of the DAO or the foundation combined. It's like I think the number for one of them was like 5 times the amount of projects because we're just way more capital efficient in how we do it. So it doesn't, you don't have all that huge admin. So we're less costly and can show impact. It becomes like as long as they like the cut of our jib and like our vibe, it's not a hard sell for these ecosystems.
Yeah, for sure. And real quick, another dumb question is, it's called the Thrive Protocol. What makes it a protocol? What's the tech thing other than it's a company with a website that helps do this?
Yeah, I mean, there will be. Let's see, it will become more and more protocol as time goes on. I'll say that, but the tech stack is it's an incentives app. And it's all, it's blockchain integrated. Like we integrate the technology of our partners. Like we white label our applications or our apps. So like there's our Thrive Metis app, our Thrive Polygon, et cetera. And so we integrate the technology. If it's an L1 like Dash or something, we integrate the technology into it. So the Hedera is a good example of that, where the Hedera wallet is all integrated with it. So we do have that aspect of it. But you have the incentives app, which is what we use to run like tasks and things, and you can do growth type stuff and community engagement type stuff. And then the other app is the grants app, which is milestone based grants funding. And then there's a reviewer app. So that's the app where the reviewers are, or like we call them guardians actually, but the reviewers go in and adjudicate whether or not the task was done right or the milestone is legitimate. So the protocol is just the combined, and then there's an admin app too that we log into and kind of do back office type stuff. But the protocol is sort of the combined system and technology of Thrive. And as I mentioned, it becomes more and more of a protocol as time goes on.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. So now just sort of like a lot of that is very, some of it is low level. A lot of it's still high level where people understand very conceptually about like, oh, this is why you do this. This is how it works, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But now we get into the actual like details as far as things. So let's just do like a walkthrough from beginning, to end, sort of very Socratically, right? Where you have, let's just say you have protocol X, or let's just use the Dash example. Let's
use Dash.
So let's just say, Dash has a treasury that kicks out almost 8,000 Dash a month, every single month in something called a super block. Blink, like a heartbeat in the Bitcoin emission, just pops out. And anyone who has one Dash can submit a proposal for the network, and then the masternodes, the stakeholders of the DAO, fund whatever. And there's been a few trusted entities that have sort of ended up being more of the funding right now, because it just, over the years, everyone with enough time and experience and stuff, the underperformers and the scammers kind of just get washed out, especially
That's right.
So we got sort of a good thing going now, but maybe through process of elimination and constraints rather than through full efficiency. And a lot of it is still, I would say, it's all personal opinion, right? My own personal show, my own personal opinion. I would say a lot of it is very like instinctive, to where you trust these people that they're doing, them, their heart's in the right place, they're smart, they're good workers, they're putting out good output. But as far as like tracking the actual effectiveness of this across a wide variety of verticals, it's not as direct, right? As far as it's just like, oh yeah, he's doing great, let him figure it out, and great work, let's keep funding you. And so that's kind of like the overview where it is. So
can you give me an example? Sorry,
Yes.
Joel. Can you give me example? And if you don't, you can name them if you want to, but you don't have to. But like, what types of projects or groups are getting the sort of the bulk of the funding with?
Yes.
Dash?
So I mean, it's all public info, right? As far as with everything. So let me just pull it up really here. So the big thing is Dash Core Group, which it used to do a lot of stuff for Dash. Now has three big pieces to it, which is core protocol development, meaning what most people know as Dash, which is the UTXO based blockchain. Then there's the platform team, which is also protocol, but it's the data side of things, the enshrined sidechain that does all that stuff, which is actually more development than the core protocol right now as far as like total development, because it's also newer. But basically the two pieces of the core protocol. And then there's product, and product does mostly the Dash mobile wallets and the official, as it were, even though you can integrate to whatever. So that group gets a lot of funding because they build Dash, and then also the front-facing thing that most people will use, which is the awesome mobile wallet. And they keep on delivering, and they get I think the mobile wallet's one of the best in the business as far as at least the money side of things, as far as it's not like a DeFi app type thing. But like as far as the payments and money and all that basic stuff, it's really good, I think. But again, just kind of say, hey, let us keep working, give us money, and then that's how that works. So before I go on to other ones, how do you see that?
No, that makes sense. So it's a lot of infrastructure basically is what Dash is working on. And I mean that's common. It's common across crypto. I mean, because you have to sort of dedicate a certain percentage of that, or you're not gonna make your chain better. So that makes sense to me.
Yes, and so then all of the other ones, there's like paying for like the governance website, a third party, someone else takes care of like the portal that does for DAO, and then someone else does host this site called MNO Watch, which is the link that I shared as far as like the leaderboard and stuff, which is they want one Dash a month, $20 a month for hosting, whatever. There's like a few. And then there's a couple of third-party developers that are working on some SDKs and block explorers and other things like that. Like, again, infra, but like third-party infra. And then for the non-tech and infra side, there's basically two things. There's a Russian and Italian community proposal, very small. They should just like, let's keep posting on Telegram and in X and other things like that.
Yep.
And it's more like, I don't know how thoroughly, like, I know the people involved. I know that they work very hard and they're really passionate about it. So, but that being, I don't know if people have evaluated the effectiveness of what they do. It just everyone knows them that they charge almost nothing. So therefore, they must be great, right? That's kind of where that's at. And then there's me, and it's basically me and a very small budget other than me, to do business development marketing. And I mean, I can assure you that I'm worth more than I'm getting paid. It's not necessarily a super quantified thing in terms of like ROI and stuff, but you can point to like how many partnerships, what are the deals you've gotten done here and there, what are the integrations, what are the what are the metrics of like how many spaces have I been on to talk about this, how many conferences, how many interviews, like all that kind of stuff. But then I'm also working with a PR firm, hopefully very soon, to do some sort of a PR pop. And so that's kind of the overview of what the DAO is funding.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so I mean, I mentioned this before, but like really where Thrive does very well is by making sure that that chains and that DAOs and foundations are getting the result that they want from their treasury spend. So, it's hard to like, I don't know enough about all the projects that the projects and the groups that you mentioned to like make any sort of like judgment. Plus, I wouldn't want to anyway. I mean, I'm sure everybody's trying to do the right thing and grow the ecosystem. I mean, Dash is a passionate ecosystem, and so yeah, I imagine people have the right thing in mind. But in general, that's what we do well. And we sit down with leadership from a chain, whether it's the CEO the CEO or the leadership of a foundation, or we've even worked with DAOs before. Like Arbitrum was was that AIP? I think that goes through as an Arbitrum improvement proposal. I can't remember what these are anymore, but that was like a DAO funded thing too. We've worked with them in the past, but typically what happens is we sit down with leadership after we get through like the deal stuff, and we decide like what are we trying to achieve? Like what is the end result that we're trying to achieve? And sometimes it's very specific. Like we want to move our chain up from number X on in terms of TVL in layer 2s to Y in TVL, and so that means return on investment for us would be that metric, would be getting X amount like locked in. And now we need to go find the projects or whatever that can do that for us. So sometimes it's very, very, very specific, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like with Arbitrum is a good example. That was a wild thing that we did, because it was sort of like abstraction layers of funding. We don't have to get into the details of that, but like we funded a ton of projects, and they were all over the place. From like one of the kind of the tranches was for what was it called? It was like Firestars, I think is what it was called. It was like, what are DAOs can be slow. So let's identify some things that the DAO needs now and go get them funded super fast. And so we funded things like communities there. We funded things like marketing firms there, like all sorts of different types of stuff. So sometimes it's more broad. Sometimes it's like, we want, we're going to do some community work. We're going to do some incentives to like have people come in and use the great apps that are on our chain. It's really kind of one of the reasons why I like what I do so much is because I get to know a bunch of different communities. They're all different. They all have different needs. They all have different personalities, and they all want different stuff. And so you see how broad crypto is, like it's not just, you're funding on-chain projects. It's not just funding DeFi, it's GameFi, it's betting, it's communities, it's onboarded community, it's social fi, it's RWA, all sorts of different things. So it just sort of depends on what the goals are. And if Dash's goals right now are infrastructure, you want to create enough. You're still building an infrastructure, and you want to make it the most usable chain in crypto, then it makes sense that's what you're funding right now.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
for sure. And also, I think to a certain extent, when I was saying about like, I kind of feel like the Dash DAO efficiently-ish allocates money more than a lot of different projects because of the process of elimination,
Yeah.
because of the constriction of like now we can only fund so many things, so it ends up being the essentials. Whereas it's not necessarily a confident. It's not necessarily that this is what it's focused on. This is just what the highest need. And then if you expand again and get a whole bunch of money, I don't know if there's more dumb stuff being funded, but it might be. But or even good smart stuff that's just not managed well. So probably what I would say, and again, I'm one person who's funded by the DAO, but I'm still relatively in tune with it, but also kind of pushed as the public face right now because like the lead devs of the core and the platform team don't really like to be out.
They don't want to talk that much.
Yeah, internally they talk a little bit, but they're not into
not externally.
putting their face on just they're just not as enthusiastic about that. Believe me, I've tried. But as such, if I could say, I would say that in addition to continuing to just build the key tools that we have, like make sure the protocol, like we're just about to release on mainnet our whole token thing, right? As far as the big overhaul where it's now not just regular data contracts and NFTs and stuff. Now there's fungible tokens and a bunch of different things you could do with that, including make the contract owner, if they want, pay the gas fees on the behalf of the user or charge the user the token for gas fees rather than the actual gas, so that you abstract away gas and some other kind of very not smart contracts but very rich token features. So like that's about to come out. That's going to be huge. And then there's going to be other stuff, including maybe smart contracts in the future. But the point is, just that needs to continue. As far as everything else, I think there's two big things. One is users. Now, we do have end user products right now. If the SOAR subject has been like the iOS version of the DashPay wallet has taken forever to like get done. So the username and contact list feature, which is so awesome, is only in the Android wallet as of like right now, but that could change very soon. But basically, the wallet is great. It has fiat on-ramps, so you can connect to buy with a credit card or whatever, or connect to your Coinbase. You have usernames and contact lists for you upload a profile picture, social payments, send people money. There's a privacy feature in there you can just have on by default. There's a spending tool that lets you spend with significant discounts at like Home Depot or Amazon or things like that built right in. You can just go right to that. Outside of the wallet, we have bill pay solutions that I figure there are about 2.8 billion people around the world might conceivably be able to pay their bills with Dash, which is pretty big, right? You got like all kinds of these cool things. So as far as if anyone's going to be using digital cash, we have the best solution on the market that's live today, and a very tiny group of users, but hardcore regular users, yes, but a tiny group. So all that being said, one goal would be to get more people to get Dash and use Dash as money and increase wallet users, regular wallet users, that kind of thing. Just grow that, because if Litecoin can have 10, 15x the transaction volume and usage and stuff with, in my opinion, a much less polished product. If they can do that, we can grow to that level. So that's number one. So before I go into other stuff, what are your thoughts initially?
No, I mean Hedera did a community engagement type of thing through Thrive. That was like our first initial thing, our initial initiative together, Thrive Hedera Season 1. And it was to get more people into the community using the great apps that Hedera has. Hedera's got like a really cool technology. Like it's super fast. It's very professional. It's very fast, and so you can do a lot with that. Like I know like a lot of music products.
Their socks are pretty decent because they're giving those away at Consensus, and
someone took a picture.
Almost like compression socks. They're very like, for any sock aficionados out there, I don't know if you're a sock casual, but if you're into them socks. Anyway,
I mean, I like the look of it. So someone who one of the projects I met was like applying for Thrive Hedera, and they sent me a picture of the socks. So I saw them. I was like, wow. I have not quite a maxi, but I have like a Hedera maxi in my company. who's great guy.
Hmm.
Loves Hedera, and I was like, oh man, he'd kill for these. But I'm in Florida, so I don't need to wear socks. Like I never wear socks. I hate socks. Like I don't want to wear them, but I do
Yeah.
like those, and I would wear those. But anyway, so Thrive Adara season 1 was community engagement. Really, it was bringing new users into the ecosystem using these great apps. And so that's always something that can be done. I need to learn more about Dash because I have like a lot of questions on how stuff is working. Like as soon as there's smart contracts, it's kind of an easy then it's a no
Yeah.
brainer. Then it's like now there's let's onboard a bunch of projects.
Hmm.
You could still like okay, let's onboard projects that will integrate it's Dash Pay, right? Is that the is
Yeah.
that the wallet? Yeah.
That's the wallet. So it gets a little complicated, but there's 3 data contracts, which data contracts are like a database schema that prescribes how data gets written, and then you can call it up. So it's not a computational thing as in a smart contract, but it's a
Right.
thing. And so DPNS is the Dash Platform Name Service, which is what causes you to like register a username and associate that with your keys or whatever. Dash Pay, as it's called in the smart contract, which unfortunately shares the name with the wallet,
Right.
is the friending mechanism, which basically allows you to exchange a encrypted extended public key for private payments. And that's the
Got it.
friending process. Now you're connected. Now you have a very specific XPub key for someone to send private payments to. And then there's one, I can't remember if it was called Wallet Utils or something. It's some internal name, but that writes whatever transaction metadata, like who is it for, rent for this company, whatever, is encrypted and then written on the chain. So
I
you
see.
have all your invoice kind of data all hidden, encrypted, but still recorded. So, but anyway,
Right.
it's a collection of those things. So that collection could be exported to other wallets, and that's
Right.
definitely on the radar at some point.
Well, and I'm wondering,
Anyway,
can Dash serve as the back end of things? Like, would Dash be
yes.
like Dash might? That's what I'm thinking. Is like you can any sort of rails where you need to do cross border or whatever. Could Dash be working on in the background of that with
Absolutely.
an interface above it? So like that would be another way to get like if you could, especially if Dash could be integrated into some sort of Web 2 app that there's a payment. Like imagine like Dash powers whatever Venmo cross border or something like that would be
Yeah. So we're working
huge.
on trying to think if there's a third. Must be a third one. I don't remember, but at least 2. Like so, as I mentioned earlier, at some point about there's a company, a Brazilian company, 88i, which
Yep,
is microinsurance,
that's right.
and I guess when you buy a microinsurance thing, like for the duration of an Uber ride, for example, you get that data recorded on the blockchain instantly. Something that's good to have 1 to 3 second block times
Totally.
and be able to query it instantly. And so that is in the works. There's another company which we haven't signed agreements or anything yet, but they're very interested in doing this. Actually, anyway, I don't want to give too much away, but they have a
You don't want to give some alpha?
well, I already gave enough alpha to the community, but I don't want to like make it stand promised before we actually
I
figure
see.
out the details.
All
But
right, no worries, no worries.
basically, it's a sort of a TradFi app where it's like a Venmo style, like a European Venmo,
Okay.
where you have peer-to-peer payments and cross-chain bank-to-bank type transfers, but
Yeah.
they're wanting Dash for the stablecoin settlements between things because again, very low fees and 1 second transaction finality is
Totally.
really good,
Right.
and also considering using it for their own social thing like username and contact list for the wallet, but just instead of running their own centralized system on that, just plug into that instead.
Yeah.
And just doing that. So there's something that kind of stuff is already sort of in the works ish. And so the thing is when you have like again a small team of people working hard at this, you find a few big things that you then connect to. But
Yep.
as far as like so that's the second side of things, right? The first side of things is just we have stuff people can use today that
And they
we
should be
want
using it,
tons
yeah.
of users.
Right.
And I'm doing some things towards this, but like we need more than just what me and my 800 hats can do, right? But and then the other side of things is we need to build on this new protocol. And that, again, we have a couple of things we've identified like that we're working on, but it would be great to just, rather than have me now have to go headhunt or other people go out and what are some companies that are working, like the conference circuit, which of course will still happen.
Sure.
But to just have a thing of like, everyone come build on Dash, like a developer grant portal, like right in there. And
Right.
yeah. So that's kind of the second thing that we might want to see. So yeah, fire off on that a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I did want to ask you a question. So is there any other way that funding happens through Dash besides would you say master block reward that
The
happens
super
every
block,
month?
as they call
What is
it.
it?
The super block.
Super block, thank you. I don't know why I used master block. Maybe that's
Master
something
node,
else.
Dash master node, vote for the super block.
Thank you.
Yeah, so historically that has been, in my opinion, that might be a little bit of a crutch, I think, and people got mad when I call it a crutch, but whatever, of everything was funded through the DAO. And now there's people who do some things on a volunteer basis. When I started work in January, I didn't submit a proposal until I crowdfunded my first month of expenses from donations, because I wanted, first of all, a good sign that this is what people wanted me to do, but also I wanted to show people that they could get things done without having to wait on the official funding mechanism. So there have been some things that have been funded. Aside from that, we're doing a big privacy overhaul over the next 6-9 months, whatever it's going to take. And that is, we have a nonprofit that is pledged to fund that entirely. So, kind of outside funding and grants for wherever, which the benefit of the DAO is you can self-fund, meaning you don't have to take the strings that are attached to receiving outside money. But from my opinion, I think that if when there's an alignment, like as long as your core protocol, it's just like there's nothing wrong with taking side gigs as long as your main thing
Totally
is there. So as long as you fund the core protocol development, the core team, then for specific other add-ons, there's nothing wrong with exploring grants. And of course, I'm always willing to explore any other grants from anything. Like if Gitcoin wants to throw us a bag, like whatever.
Sure. Yeah. But you said outside money. What does that look like? There's not a foundation or something. It's what is that? How does that work again? Maybe you explained it, but I didn't quite get it.
For outside, there is the entity, there's a nonprofit called Power Up Privacy that we are engaging with on this particular thing.
I see.
And we're open to engaging with others. But the point is, there's just that. But that's what I mean by outside money. It could be donation based.
Yep.
I'd really like to get the donation based kind of thing going more, but also I think maybe when we start getting the price pumping a little bit more, people feel more generous.
It's true.
But then it's mostly just been the DAO. The DAO is like almost everything. And there has been not a ton of fee revenue on the system total, which is a lot of those early projects, especially payment only, super cheap transactions. But I would like to have and it is in the roadmap, I guess, to add a fee element to the DAO as well, to where revenue from the actual protocol feeds back into the DAO. So it's like an actual virtuous cycle and not just the block reward, which goes down by 7% a year. And that's all that there is. So a fee-based thing, as well as a pot of money that you can, I'm sure the fees go into, but also that you could donate to the DAO as a whole kind of thing if you wanted to. So
I got you.
Yeah. Hope that makes some things a little bit more clear. It's a little bit an interesting system, but yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, right. I think I just think a lot of focus needs to be in user adoption, but that's not, I don't think that that's like anything that, I think that's the truth for everybody. And I would say that to everybody because I want crypto to grow. And so how can you best do that with the funds that you have? A lot of times it's, if you launch great projects, it attracts people because they want to use the thing, whether it's it could be a game. Like crypto gaming is so much better now, is just as an example, like the last like bull cycle, nowhere near as good as like the game was the afterthought to the actual Web3 thing. And it just wasn't compelling, but now it's like real awesome game studios are producing great content that has Web3 integration that's actually allowing people to do more awesome stuff. And so that's that's going to bring in like people who love to play games and they, want to play a great game. It's going to bring people into crypto because they're going to get to do new stuff from it. So that's an amazing way to onboard. From that to like Polymarket, think about like all the eyeballs were on Polymarket as they absolutely called like every election in the last U.S. election schedule, like all senators, all Congress. Like, it's crazy.
Polymarket is one of the very best crypto apps that exists. Like I can't even think of many others as far as like
Uniswap, I think probably in terms of like ease of use or whatever, but I agree.
But like all the DEX type things are kind of internal to crypto. Like they're very for crypto. They kind of feed off of everything else. And a lot of people would say that they're kind of feeding the casino because people do the casino. Like again, I'm being shitty here. I'm not saying what I actually think, right? But like Polymarket is like a super well used and useful thing. Period.
It is. Yeah.
There's just not a lot of those in crypto.
No, and that's why I think games is a way in, because that's a super passionate community too. Gamers love it, and I love games because it's like a little bit of a tangent, but like, and I'm just I have a Switch. Like I love playing video games, but it's not like I'm in any sort of competition or anything. But I love it because where else can you get a great narrative, amazing artwork, awesome scores, and you get to participate? Like there's no other content like that, and so it makes sense why people are so passionate about it. That is an obvious onboard into crypto, an obvious one, because crypto really levels up what you can do in a game, whether it's staking or betting. Like imagine I've seen combat games, this amazing world, this like sort of medieval world where you are a character in medieval, and one of kind of the side quests you can do is go into the Colosseum and get into a fight, and people can stake on you, and like and
great.
and people can bet and stake on you. It's like so cool. You can't do that. And then, of course, all the ownership stuff and being able to bring your character or your attributes with you from game to game. I mean, all that stuff just levels up the type of experience that you have on those platforms and in games. And so it's an obvious like onboard for crypto, and we need a lot more of those. I mean, Dash to me, because of how fast it is, it's like it makes sense to be the back end of like micropayments. That's a great example. I just was looking at 88i when you were talking about it, but like that's a micro transaction or micro insurance. That's a great use case. Or like any cross border, like anything where you need fast, great transactions, retail. Like Dash is a great option for that. And so really, and I know you guys have thought about, like you were doing retail stuff or integrating Dash into retail apps. I think I don't know, 7 years ago or something, but like that all seems super obvious as a way to like onboard into Dash. But go ahead. Sorry.
So if it seems like everything is super, like open and shut, kind of. If the project has a very strong idea of exactly what they want, like we want more users in these apps in this way, and we want these apps built, and we just say like, rather than just oversee and have all overhead, why don't you guys help for that? That seems super straightforward. But now let's get into the squishier part where it's just like it's a little bit more vague of a concept. And so like, for example, let's just say we want more users. And that's kind of all we show you. With the blockchain, obviously.
Yeah.
We got this wallet, and we have a few third-party wallets and some other companies that work with us, and we want to see those transaction numbers go up on the network because we got more people using this as money. Let's just say that. Like in general, like we just want more users, but don't know how to quantify ROI with that. And it's not like, hey, we have this much money, here you go, can you help it be efficient? Rather than that, it's like, well, what do you want? Well, we don't 100% know.
We don't know.
So what do we do? Let's just throw that hypothetical at it.
Wow.
What happens in this case?
Well, I mean, we do have to define to a certain extent what impact means for the community, and it would be interesting for me to know how Dash is like deciding that as a community. Like the thing, is it just through the vote of who gets funded? I mean, is that really the determining factor, or do you have a large influencer in the community, maybe one of the core developers who are like, no, we like, do you have, what's leadership like in Dash? Because I would look to them, and maybe it's you, Joel, maybe
Yeah.
looking to you to sort of define that, but we'd have to sort of define what we want the output to be, because if you don't, then you can't measure anything. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But if it's like,
Now, is that something you work with people with, or
oh
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
So that's, I guess, where it comes in. Like,
Totally.
let's almost like live workshop for like a
Yeah.
So like, let's just say we want more users, and that's just kind of what we know. And the metrics that we might be aware of are wallet downloads and active users, if we can measure that, but also just transactions on the network, and also transactions going through some of these third-party services that do things like bill pay or sell a gift card or point of sale systems or whatever, like all that, just adoption. Can you help us get more users? How do we measure it? What do you think?
Yeah. So as I was talking about before, like the easiest way is to fund great projects who have great product market fit, and then they are like, we fund them in turn and include usually like a percentage or a high percentage of the funding of the funded amount is for marketing, or is for, or it could be for technology, but for whatever it is, like a new part of the tech stack, or a new feature that brings in new users or attracts new users, or it could be marketing budget to attract new users. That's one way to do it. Dash is a different situation, but that's usually the best way, because they're going to know their apps best. And if you just create metrics around what type of scaling they need to do, but you give them the fuel to do it, then they tend to be able to execute that better. However, it doesn't always work, because if you're not trying to onboard projects, you're just trying to onboard users, then there's other things you can do. So to answer your question though, what happens is when we start a new initiative with a project, we have an onboard flow, or with an ecosystem, we have an onboard flow. Usually it's my CEO who leads that, but I, as now head of ecosystem, I manage those relationships now. So I'm the one who's pitching projects to our boards. I'm the one who's accountable to them, talking about our budget, talking about the life, like where everybody's at in terms of their milestones and things. So I am going forward a part of those, but usually there's a flow there where you're describing like, what does value mean to the ecosystem? What is like our core vision for the engagement? And then you go through sort of the metrics around that. So we kind of lead them down a path. And a lot of times they know, but we lead them down this path of discovery, where we then come to terms with what is the output desired. And so say it's like, whatever, we want to increase our TVL or increase our transaction volume or whatever. There's a number of ways that we can do that. It could be funding for incentives to do stuff, incentives to download the app, do your first transaction, mint something, depending on the ecosystem, a number of things. It could be funding that actually like does, it could be community type of work. It could be educational work. We funded, like, for example, SheFi is a good example. It's an organization that onboards women into Web3. My wife went through it. And so we funded them through Thank Arb, which is our initiative with Arbitrum. And and how it benefited Arbitrum is all these women who were onboarded were shown and given the Arbitrum tools. So that's what they were using to transact and to explore Web3. So it could be educational stuff like that. You can even do it, locale specific. If there was a target community that we wanted to get Dash involved with. I remember Dash doing a lot of stuff in Venezuela and in South America back in the day. I mean, it could be identifying the right communities or countries that Dash could really provide a lot of value for, like when you're talking about Venezuela or something, all the inflation and capital controls and everything.
Interesting kind of side thing, because Dash did have a very big presence in Venezuela at one point.
That's right.
Part of that was a nexus of like, oh, we're here, this is a problem, but it was a Venezuelan team found out about Dash and said, we can onboard thousands of merchants. And they did exactly what they said.
That's right.
And so that was one of the greatest success stories for a while there. And now the dark side of that is two things. First of all, how do these people, like, we would never have been in that position if there hadn't been a team that had just happened to come across the DAO and be like, hey, we want to do it. And so the actual finding the talent was trickier. And then in the end of the day, they did things really well. But first of all, you have a collapsing country with like blackouts and stuff like that, and getting spicy internet money might be trickier to get adoption.
It's true.
And then especially when a lot of businesses are going under during this time, people aren't even paying their own bills a lot of times, or but also the whole thing of how do people get their hands on Dash to begin with in a smooth way never was really solved. Is like, how do we get people to earn? Like, people were mining Bitcoin because they could and they could make money. Some people are mining Dash. It was a little harder. The main exchange in the country didn't support Dash, so you'd have to swap from Bitcoin to Dash. And like, there's how that part of the thing wasn't filled. So again, looked great because you had thousands of merchants, 3,000 in the Caracas area, right? A lot of merchants came on board, and you got CoinDesk writing about it and some other stuff. Like, you got clearly like signals from the community that this is being effective, but not measurable, not like ultimately like the adoption is money as far as how many people are using it. There is an inflated versus the rest of the world Dash presence there still today, but it's not nearly where it could be because of all those challenges that weren't necessarily figured out. So yeah, anyway, that's just kind of a thing of like, in the next time we do a big adoption push, right? How could Thrive, first of all, figure out a way to make sure it's like going to be effective and not just things look good for us, but can you help with that? But also, can you help to drive the talent to the actual money to get this done? As far as like, let's onboard people, but we don't know anyone who's a good marketer who could get it, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of my day, a little bit less in the last couple of weeks because I just took on this role as head of ecosystem, and so I'm still kind of spinning that up and kind of learning what I have to do there. But I'm also maintaining my role of onboarding great projects. So I spend, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was spending most of my day sourcing great projects to launch and scale in our partner ecosystems. I'm basically an extension of their DevRel. Like literally an extension of the DevRel for like 5 ecosystems at a time, like right now. And in the course of that, like, I also find teams who are quality enough and that can build whatever. And so one thing that can be done is if we allocate capital to teams who will build certain apps that will start to seed Dash in a particular location. So like, I'll just give an example. Maybe this is whatever, but if you created like a Craigslist with Dash inside of it, which wouldn't be that hard to do, so that people could start earning Dash for doing even little jobs. Like, I would imagine in a place like Venezuela at the time, high unemployment. People are trying to they'll do odd job. They'll do stuff, peer-to-peer stuff to earn some tokens. And that starts the marketplace, right? If you sort of like seed that type of platform for them. So that would be like one maybe option. I'm sure we can come up with, I don't know, 25 different options that maybe might work, and we could even A/B test them. We could say, okay, let's try this versus let's try this and see which one works better and like double down on it. That would be one thing to do. But I think, given some time, we could probably come up with, I don't know, a bunch of projects that might really help work. And I think, and it could just be like a Web 2 with type of thing with Dash integrated into it. And
it's funny. There is someone who, community dev, who did build basically a Craigslist on Dash.
Yeah.
And with some cool things, including like all the info, obviously all the data is posted on the chain. Ooh. Did I lose connection or something? Yeah. Dropped out. Oh, well. I'll save a little bit of the conversation until he pops back in. But basically, that was a Dash Money who created the two-party pay thing. But that could be a very effective way, especially once you get to a point where you're actually identifying the key verticals of like where the money needs to go to get the outcome you want. And the outcome we want is more users. And so the other outcome, of course, as I was mentioning, is more things built on chain, but it could end up being something like that. So yeah, I definitely think it's interesting. He trumped out of the chat. Back. Okay, just trying to. For some reason, he just got booted right out of the right out of the stream. Yeah, so it's an interesting. Michael Viloff in the chat, the YouTube chat here, mentioned it's kind of like the Dash Incubator, and was hard to tell, but there was a system like that was created that kind of internally. It started with Andy Freer, who for a while was the lead architect for Dash, and basically it was. Hold on a second. Let me just. I'm gonna have to create a new link to this for some reason. This was actually a Brave bug. I'll send a new link. But anyway, the incubator was an interesting situation there, right? Because it was kind of sort of this exact same thing. And actually, I'm going to just throw the thing onto the Thrive protocol while I get this thing figured out. It was kind of the same thing where you have like a group that's supposed to allocate to different tasks and only pay out once they're actually there, right? Now the efficiency, they had it was kind of like a proto thing, right? Where the efficiency of everything hadn't necessarily been worked out. And so, like the incubator has been funded for many, many years as far as like that. And I did something called the Dash Marketing Hub, which is a fork of that. But on the whole, it seemed to be less polished and more, I guess, more amateur in the way, right? As far as like the ROI of these tasks that were, it was very task by task. Everyone gets paid for the tasks that they do, right? And the ROI was kind of not super, it kind of wasn't super polished on that front. And I think that this seems like a little bit more of an advanced version of that. So, Matt, I did see you pop back in. No camera or microphone on, but at least it seems like you're in the same group.
Trying to turn my camera. Oh,
Okay,
here.
I hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes,
and
at
then
least I can
maybe
hear
you
you.
should be able to see me in a second here. Oh, what happened?
Perfect. Yeah, I don't know.
crazy.
It literally kicked you out. And at that point, I think it is definitely Brave's fault, or Brave or Jitsi, whichever. Like literally, we didn't lose connection. It just decided you're no longer going to see each other in this same room.
I think that's right. I mean, I'll check my speed test because who knows? Maybe something funky is happening, but usually I have pretty good.
This has happened before in Jitsi, not so much in Brave Talks instance of Jitsi, but what was the last thing we were talking about the
Venezuela, and we were talking about, we were just talking about like apps that could potentially be used.
So there is one two-party kind of pay that has like all the listings and stuff are written on the chain, like the querying of like keywords and stuff is also on the chain. And when you go to actually buy an item, you can open up a peer-to-peer encrypted chat to where you can talk about, hey, is this item still for sale? What is it, blah, 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 and then do the actual like payment right there and stuff. So this is all built out in concept. I don't know if it's ready for public use, but it is running, right? So this could be an interesting thing. One thing I was kind of rambling on the side, because there was a question, part of the filibuster, which, anyone needs to know a good filibuster if you ever have a connection issue, which if you stream, you always have a connection issue at some point. But there were a few different projects that are very similar to this, but internal, right? To where there's one called Dash Boost, which was just a micro treasury That was when the Dash Treasury was putting out like a few million a month, and it was just so many proposals getting thrown at it, and it was
Oh
just
yeah.
like, and so this was like, let's take a portion of this and do a microcosm for small grants, because the masternodes who are funding large organizations don't have the time to go over, this guy in Nigeria wants to run a meetup and stuff, and so they just kind of outsource that to a smaller thing. Dash Boost was fine; it worked out fine, but I guess at this scope isn't needed anymore. But it was just it wasn't a different thing, as it were, as far as like, it's literally just a mini treasury, just
Yeah.
the same thing but smaller. And then there was an organization called, it still is one of the ones that's being funded right now in some capacity, but it's called the Dash Incubator, which is almost, in a lot of ways, almost to a T, an internal Thrive protocol, in that it was a purely task-based, reward to the task-based, with administrators that get a small piece of whatever to, kind of system for almost exactly this thing. Conceptually, I think it was great. And I made one of my things during my non-full-time times at Dash. I made a fork of it, sort of, called the Dash Marketing Hub, which did a kind of less dev-focused, more marketing-focused version of something like the Thrive Protocol. Again, very specific. When I ended up winding that down, and then the incubator is still around, but has gotten less funding, and I'm not going to try to ruffle too many feathers by saying it, but I think that it's had some cases of like not the best ROI, and part of the reason, like, and again, I'm not saying that against them, because I was part of the thing that had the same problem, and I just wound it down because I didn't think it was working out, rather, and so like I don't think it worked, but my criticisms were, it was a very complicated system that was mostly built on a Trello board, and
Yeah.
which is better than nothing. But again,
True.
it's not an actual app yet, and the apps were kind of worked on and built and didn't really get released for whatever. Long story. But the other thing is the actual. It was more of a process for defining tasks and getting people paid, but the ROI part of it wasn't really quite there.
Yeah.
As far as like, how does this, it's more of like a bureaucratic system by which you dispose of money, but
Right.
not necessarily does it align with these ROI metrics, and how do you measure the ROI? It was more, if enough people vote on it, therefore ROI is measured. But it's not necessarily, it's kind of like a,
If consent, but not really ROI measurement.
yes. It's so basically, we've tried to do lots of these kinds of things over the years.
Yeah.
I would, again, because it's an active thing and there's people involved who do watch the show, who knows if they get annoyed by my characterization here, but I would say the Dash Incubator largely did not function well as that idea. And where it has functioned has been, it just is an entity whereby people fund things the community already knows they want, such as there's a native JavaScript SDK for the Evolution platform that is being funded. And it's not so much that the bureaucracy system of it did that. It's more the community says, we want this. And the guy who runs the incubator said, I can do that. I know a dev. And then it got done. So it's kind of like anything, and I'm sure I can debate with Ryan plenty on this, but I would say that everything good that the incubator has done has kind of succeeded in spite of its structure, not because of its structure. So anyway, all that to just a little bit of context, but there you go.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's just hard to do it. Like, it's hard to do it, especially at scale, and not to have like a big bureaucracy around it, because you want some sort of consensus mechanism from the people who who are stakeholders in it. And so you want that, but then too much of that, and then it becomes just this, like, it just becomes like way too bureaucratic. It's a pain. And then it ends up like, if you do it right, meaning you're tracking it well, and and you're tracking and you set up milestones and you whatever, like, if you're, it's costly to do it unless you are well positioned as an organization. And most of them, that's not usually a DAO's core competency, or a foundation's core competency. Their core competency is around the technology that they're building, or their mission and vision. Like, that's their core competency. It's not to spin up this sort of side piece thing that that allocates funding for them and to help them grow. I mean, now you're just you have to, right, you basically have to spin up another Thrive inside your org, and there's never been anything like us, so it's hard to do. We're kind of the first that's been able to do this. There's a lot of grant allocators out there, and I got to tell you, like, I've heard feedback from our ecosystems, and I don't mean to poo-poo anybody, but it's like they can't do it either. It's like, really, we're kind of the anomaly that can do this, so it's hard. It's super hard.
It's like many have come at the king. You're the only one that's this.
And it's not like it can't be done. It's just like we just have a certain set of systems and technology,
kind of like Polymarket, right?
People
it's
in place.
Not like you can't build a successful mass market app built on a cryptocurrency, but it's just that Polymarket kind of did it sooner than a lot of other people.
They did. Yeah, they did. And this was sorely missing. And crypto before Thrive existed had a decade to do, or whatever, had 7 years to do this, and couldn't really figure it out, which is why we have the dead carcass thing that we talked about earlier. And
speaking of dead carcasses, by the way,
I'd love to.
Frank Dashwood in the comment says, dude reminds me of the lead singer for Cannibal Corpse. Says,
I don't even know what that looks like.
Says, no, not Cannibal Corpse. Sorry, Napalm Death, but one of them death metal ones. So speaking of Corpse,
do I come across like that?
Yeah, I mean,
Let me see. Let's find them.
Let me just say again,
this guy's much bigger than me. Like, I'm in good shape.
Yeah, this is why I'm not paid to do this podcast.
Look how big this guy is. Like, I'm in good shape. Well, he's not a bad looking guy, though. I
guess it's like the haircut a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, now I do read the comments.
Good. I mean, if there's any more comments, please keep
because that gets thrown in there. But so there've been a few different kinds of things haven't really worked out. All of these things in their I mean, I would say they kind of worked out in some ways. Like the did they work out is contextual on what was the alternative during that time period, and I would say Dash Boost worked out. I would say that the incubator, mixed result. I would say the marketing hub, because I get to criticize my own thing that I made a lot of good things happen, but it was very much in spite of itself, not because of itself. It was because.
What do you mean by in spite of, though? What do you mean?
Meaning because me and the two, and Kanuker and Pozo, the three of us who ended up being like the ones running it, like as a quorum, sort of, ended up putting out and then we had a couple of people who did some work under it.
Yeah.
We ended up putting out some good results, ourselves. But it's not that we created a system. Like, everything that turned out great was because we kind of did it ourselves and paid ourselves for it, sort of thing. Whereas, the vast, it wasn't like it was a good productive system that worked. And so I shuttered the system because I figured it wasn't really, it was kind of surviving to survive at some point, and it wasn't like everything good we were doing, we could have, it's just because I decided to do it and just gave myself permission to do it. It just was needless bureaucracy. So I got rid of it.
Because if it wasn't you guys who cared, and just want to put a lot into it and love the ecosystem and love the technology and whatever,
and
then
that's
it wouldn't
why
work.
when I came back full time, I literally just said, I want to do these things.
Yeah, right.
Give me budget for an employee and some other stuff, and I will just do it. And then they've been very happy that I've been completely a centralized, tyrannical dictator doing everything that I want, being funded.
Dude,
because
that's the way.
Yeah, because it worked out. But again, it's not. I got rid of the crap that was sort of the bureaucracy system that was sort of holding me back and just did it. But like, if there's a system that has been proven to work, so that's the thing. Obviously,
sorry, Joel. We talked about this earlier. It's like that's really the hard part. It's like, get funding into the hands of high context, productive people who, are trying to do the right thing. So there's probably a moral part of that too. But that's the hardest thing. It's like, you do attract, because there's money in Web3. You do attract. Let's just face it. Like, you do attract people who want the money, which is fine. You should do things for money. But it's like, it's hard to find that it's hard. We got to figure out a way to do that. And from a team perspective, I think we do that really well, because we're adjudicating and vetting projects based on prior history, their team, and everything. So we're trying to do that, fund great projects, and on an individual level, we need to do that in these DAOs too. It's like find high context, moral people who want to crush it, and just give them the money so they crush it. There are just a certain amount of people. It's I don't know what percentage it is, 5%, 10% of people who are just high capacity, will shit into being, can serve as dictators and be and do the right thing by the org. There's it's not a high percentage, but there's a percentage of people that can do that, who love and are passionate about the ecosystem. Get them money, for God's sakes. Get them money.
Yes. And so, look, let's be super like transparent on like my stuff. As I do business development and marketing, I feel like where I've been shining more has been the business development side, and in the marketing side of things, that is being a face and figurehead, going on shows, speaking eloquently on behalf of things like that kind of stuff. Not so much the produce fantastically effective marketing material that gets more attention, and like working on that stuff. But like, again, the one person can't be the best at everything, but and that's part of why we're engaging with a PR firm to do like a big pop and stuff. But beyond that, I think that when it comes to onboarding as many new users as possible, I kind of feel like figuring it out all myself would take a little bit of time to acquire a completely new skill set and things, and do a lot of trial and error and stuff. And what I'd like to be able to do is just give it to something that then can help manage and then work together on on that kind of thing. So, and then as far as like the apps are concerned as well, I do feel like the incubator sort of came around, had money, and then first of all, there was no dev tools or SDKs out there that could really help them. So they're sort of struggling, and then they're like, well, let's build them, and they kind of didn't figure out how to do that. But then also it was just like, how many of these apps are going to end up being an ROI positive app as far as how people can use them, and that part was like kind of a little struggling. So now it's just like, again, everything gets slashed. What's left is the thing that everyone agrees on is essential. So at some point when we get a little bit more funding through there, I would like to pump it through something where people are building the cool apps that are sticking. Or also it could be a thing where we have a number of third-party companies that I've talked to, like wallets and stuff, that say, hey, we want to integrate your usernames and systems and stuff. Do you have any grants? Yeah. And my conversation is always, yes, I'd love to. When it comes to the grant, I'd have to like figure it out. Like I'd have to be like, hey, who else got, I'd rather just be able to say, here, everyone who wants to do stuff here. And anyway, all that kind of makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Actually, that's a good thing. It's like there are certain, let's just say, I don't want to name them specifically, but like there are hardware wallets that I know that are lesser known, but great. But that have like a ton of TVL. Basically, they've got like a ton of assets being held in their wallets, but they're sort of lesser known. And that would be like a huge move to have Dash integrated into their wallet, because it's most of like the users, it's like the upper level. It's a super like hardware wallet is super secure. It's the most secure one out there. And so the people that are using it are the people who like have net worth and care. And like, so having Dash integrated into that, which they would do probably with like some help a little bit from the technology side, just to like kind of get it in there to offset some of the costs from the dev costs. But like that would be a great move for Dash. Because it would just expose Dash to all the users there, and then they could just lock up their Dash in a very cold way. But yeah, I mean, and then I look for, if smart contracts are going to come too, then just adds a lot more capabilities to what can be done with Dash, and then I believe that would add a ton more excitement into using it, because it's like, okay, now we can incorporate it into all these things, like all this fun DeFi stuff or whatever, marketplaces and things, and that would totally help, I think. But yeah, I mean, more users, more apps. So, but I think you're doing the right thing. I mean, I think it's like integrating Dash into projects that people already have, like with 88i, like we talked about before, and then trying to onboard new users. maybe that's trying to like seed a locale.
Yeah.
Find another locale that makes sense. It's like, okay, let's drop a job boards that's integrated with Dash so that, and the thing I wanted to mention before I dropped off before about Venezuela, the other cool part of that though is if there was a job board where people could earn Dash, you had the place where they could spend it because you had all these like whatever stores that accepted
Mm-hmm.
Dash. So then that just creates the entire economy there. Um, so, and imagine these stores who get in Dash, right? So they take Dash for their
Mm-hmm.
goods and services. Then they can go pay. They could pay like freelancers to go do stuff for their establishment, whether if it's retail, whatever. Maybe it's like we need help. Maybe we need to like paint our store. Maybe we need to a new signage. Maybe whatever. They have people around. They're getting in all this Dash that they can pay for that type of work. I think job board and retail plugged together is like
Yeah.
one of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like in the US, where a lot of the payment infrastructure is best, it's easier to get random people to buy crypto and own crypto and then what to spend it because they like it, or get some sort of like direct deposit auto convert kind of option that works. But then it's very much philosophical. Do people care about this stuff? Are they interested in? Then yes. If not, then there's just no interest. Whereas the philosophical ability is just not necessarily nearly the same in other countries because people just need to live. But on
Yep.
the other hand, if you let them earn money, then now all of a sudden you get their attention. There's a new source of things. They get the thing. They can spend it. In fact, one of my employees actually, for the first time next week, I'm going to actually be paying someone for my channel out of the. I've earned enough to pay someone to like make clips and everything like that for the channel
Nice.
and upload them and stuff. And I've paid him from the Dash side of things a few times, and he instantly goes to make content about how he's spending Dash wherever he's at and stuff like that. It's really cool. So that is
That's
kind of
cool.
a sign. But again, this is like a random person I ran into for my trial like travels who it happened to click, but like institutionalizing that a little bit might be fun. But so
Totally.
yeah, we could go on forever about this. It's probably a good time to start wrapping this up. But before we go on that, so how does that? So I think you mentioned at a previous point that
Yeah.
typically the way things happen is someone has some sort of an agreement with Thrive. They set out these kinds of things, and then it's like allocate 5% of your treasury or 10% of your treasury or something. Is that, first of all, is that the typical way of doing things, and also is that the only type way of doing things?
So one of the things that my CEO is really great at is figuring out where the synergy overlap is and how
Mm-hmm.
and how to partner. So I think he probably has. I mean, he's kind of seen it all, so he probably has better ideas than me. But typically, how it works is exactly. It's like it's either allocate a specific amount over a specific amount of time. So Hedera is a 3-year deal, X amount of HBAR per year. It's kind of how it
Mm-hmm.
works. Or we are partnering with pre-TGE projects, ecosystems rather,
Mm-hmm.
that know they're going to have a treasury as soon as they TGE, and so we're funded at X amount of years and X amount of FDV. Actually, that's how it works. Those are kind of the most most common type of structures now. When I first was at Thrive, we had more DAO deals, so you put in a AIP or whatever and ask for a certain amount, and then there's a treasury vote or whatever. We tend to work with more foundations than DAOs at this point. It's cleaner. It's easier, honestly, for us to do it. But actually, I do think that there's another. I do think that there's another partnership that's going through a DAO right now. I'm not going to name them because I think it's early, but it might even be that the forum post is up. I have to look into it, but we do that type of stuff as well. But yeah, I would, like I said, I sort of defer to my CEO on Daniel about how that works. He's the one that kind of makes the magic happen on that side. So there's like the business development side,
Mm-hmm.
because we're two sides of the marketplace, right? So there's the business development side where we're going and finding partnerships with these ecosystems like Dash, And then there is the project side, that's the side that I'm really on, where you manage the relationships with the ecosystems after they've already signed, and you're doing essentially DevRel, finding great projects to fund for them. So that's kind of the side that I live on. And so, but he just, one of his gifts is just figuring out how to make the partnerships work.
Yeah.
Finding the commonalities and making them work. Yeah.
Now the part where it gets tricky with Dash funding, and there's always a quirk, and I've had to, again, we've been working with this PR firm, or we've been talking about it. And it's all public info at this point because it's on the DAO and stuff. But,
sure.
Market Across is the firm, and I ran into them at an event and talked to them, and they're like, "Oh, I remember Dash from back in the day. Very cool project. Haven't heard much these days. I think we could probably help. We're not cheap, but we can. This is what we do. And what do you think?" And so I thought, let me talk to them and think about it. Then I went to the DAO and said, "Hey, I think we should fund this at least for a little bit." And they're like, "Okay." And then because it's again a monthly block reward thing, there's no pot of money. I was like, let's spread it out over a few months. The first one did not get funded. So I had to tell the person, well, it looks like the network probably says no. He was like, oh, okay. And then the next month we did get some funding. It's like, oh, so just so you know, we got some money, but not enough to start, but like maybe it'll be yes. And then this 12 hours ago, then that finally got enough to be like, I think we can probably start figuring out how to start now. But it just very much like, how do you communicate with the uncertainty? So it's like, obviously if we got something good figured out, we could then go and say, hey, this is good, we should allocate this much. And then if people need treasury funding that is outside of whatever, go through the Thrive portal, the Thrive dashboard, right?
Right.
You go through there. And then most people, the masterminds, have a good understanding that, we should keep this funded, right? As far as like a 5% of the whatever goes right into here. Now, there's always the chance that, they change their mind at the last minute. Just, again, you don't know because it's an anonymous global DAO. I know not for a fact, but like pretty strongly that like a good quarter or a third of like the user base and investor base is somewhere in the Russian speaking area of the world, which we never did any explicit outreach to. They just got Dash, showed up, spun up masternodes. Now they're here. And it's like, that's just how it works. So again, there can be a language barrier sometimes. And then, so basically, is there a situation where it's like, all right, we got a thing figured out, we're getting funded, and then something doesn't work out where that all of a sudden becomes like a problem, like a breach of contract type thing? Or is it just like, okay, you didn't get funding this month, but then maybe they'll refund you next month? Like the flexibility to deal with that, is that kind of there?
That's actually what I was going to ask you. Is there any way of allocating cross months? So saying, okay, so for the next 12 months, it's going to be X percentage of the blah, blah, blah.
So,
does that work?
Yes. So how that would work would be you would submit, let's just say like round up to 8,000 Dash for the whole treasury. 10% is 800, 5% is 400. So you could put in a 400 Dash per month, 12-month proposal. So every month for 12 months, it kicks out 400 Dash. And at the end of the year or whatever, then you'd create a new one, probably. You just would, but so it gets funded every single month for those 12 months, but select months could potentially be defunded. Every single month, it's like there's a voting window, it gets paid out, but then like the votes could change, and then the next time you don't get a payout, which is exactly what happened with this Market Across thing. I did not get the first payment, but then I got the other two out of it was out of 4, so I'm of 1-0. The first one,
I
no.
see.
So it's the answer is yes, and typically, if something is supposed to get funded for a certain period of time like that, it does get good support the first time, unless something goes catastrophically wrong, it tends to continue. But it's just not a guarantee. And that's the thing with decentralized things, the guarantees aren't the same.
That's true, for sure. Yeah, I don't know how to figure that out. I think I'd have to learn more to kind of think through what would or would not be possible there. Yeah, because there's definitely there would be like some risk for Thrive putting in the infrastructure for something and then it not be funded, or if it's or even you do the spin up and you put up sort of the upfront things and then it doesn't get funded. So there's some risk there as for Thrive.
Yeah,
So
so
I think
like one way of mitigating that risk could potentially be after a certain number of months funding that you start, for example, or there's like an upfront bit, and then it's like a single time kickoff Thrive, which is like 500-600 dash or something, and then the next one is like a smaller amount per month over. So there's a bunch of ways of like configuring it. It's a very configurable system, but it's just like it's very decentralized,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's tricky. That's the tricky. But I mean that, yeah. But it's Web3, and there's all different types, all different ways that people go about things, which is super fun from like an experimental standpoint.
Yeah, but it's sometimes challenging from like a business
totally
standpoint.
Challenging. Yeah,
for of course. Well,
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I just say like that's probably a good overview of this whole thing, and it's been a very good, insightful chat, and I hope I'm going to keep pushing people to watch the show over time to start to like learn more about all this stuff, because I think this is interesting to pursue. Is there some kind of where could we direct people to find out more about Thrive in terms of like documentation, case studies, potential like ROI proving, like who else has done this and that, all that kind of info? Where would you direct them?
You just go to thrive.xyz, and then our app is app.thrive.xyz. So if you are a project and you're interested in pursuing funding through some of our partners, app.thrive.xyz, create your user profile, create your project profile that connects to it, and then like basically you can. It's not quite one click, but you can look at the funding opportunities and be like, oh, I'd love to pursue this one here. Click the button. Probably fill out a few more questions that are specific to the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. You want to take your time with it because you want to do a good job, or no one's going to look at it. But that's where you would go for if you're a project and you're interested. And then, like I said, thrive.xyz. There's thriveprotocol.com, all the information from there. There's a lot of kind of the details from over on that site, but we're moving it over to thrive.xyz. That might just be a placeholder still, but all the stuff's going to be
look like the thriveprotocol.com has a lot more of what people would be looking for
that
now.
Will be, that's moving over. We have a V2 of our app is what you see on app.thrive.xyz right now. It just launched. Mm-hmm. People can see on my timeline. I retweeted it today, but that kind of, I mean, it's still, we're launching other pieces of it here as we go. But thrive.xyz will have all the Thrive Protocol stuff here pretty soon. Our Twitter is a great place at Thrive Protocol to see stuff. Like you can see a bunch of projects that we funded and more details and all sorts of stuff there. And if people want to connect and ask questions, I'm on Twitter. You can just see me right there on Twitter and DM me, and I'll answer. If you're a project or ecosystem or whatever, happy to help route you. But I think those are kind of the places. Twitter, website, kind of the norm.
Yeah, the usuals.
The usual.
For sure. Well, thanks for being on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Matthew Carano on X.
Is that
where you are? I'll just highlight that too.
Yep, full name on X at Matthew Carano.
Did you try Matt Carano? Was that taken, or did you not care to?
At the time, I was like, well, it's just my full name is, I go by Matt, of course, but my full name I guess I was proper. I don't know. It was like 2009. What was I thinking?
Listen, 2009 is early. I got an X on 2012, so not been
9. I think it was 9.
Yes, it does say 9 over here.
So I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I just figured be myself.
It's a great way to be yourself, is to use your full legal name,
Right, come get me.
That's about as yourself as you could get.
In retrospect, maybe it wasn't the best move, but now I'm totally doxxed. Everybody knows.
What, people are not going to figure out who you are otherwise?
That's true. That's true.
It's crazy. All right, well, thanks very much for being on. This has been a great chat. I'll share it around, and I'm, unless there's I'm sure there will be follow-up is my point. And I haven't done my own due diligence yet, but from where I'm standing, it seems like a great direction for the Dash Network to go in, is to route things through Thrive, because I definitely want to see a bunch of new users in ways that I have not yet conceptualized how I would get them yet or be able to manage. And I do think that we need a lot of new applications built, especially in the coming months when SDKs start to become mature and ready. And then you start to do that rather than pay some random person to run some hackathon somewhere, which we might still do as well. But like, it seems like a better path. So thanks very much for being on. Everyone, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, etc. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye, guys.